Josh Brown, Xbox are back.
It was so good, Scott. What a showcase.
So long.
It really did. And hey, listen, okay, we're going to get into this. Of course we are. We're going to dive deep into a pretty deep showcase. Xbox are back.
Yes.
Xbox kind of never went away.
Arguably.
Microsoft are not back in my eyes still. But I must admit, as much as we've done negative stuff on Xbox as they've deserved it over the past few months, my doubt was never centered towards the actual developers, because we've seen most of the games that we're going to talk about today before. And apart from maybe Perfect Dark, I think I was pretty positive on all of them. And even Perfect Dark surprised me. So it's like, I want to give the developers credit and the studios credit in this video, but the executive level, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty, I still have major problems with.
Yes.
So it's complicated feelings for me, but overall, as a showcase, 9 out of 10, immaculate. The amount of stuff on display, I was eating well.
Yes, I think we were all eating very, very well after many years of wondering what the hell these different games were actually going to look like. Something like Perfect Dark hasn't been seen, even outside of a CG trailer for the announcement. That whole thing, that distinction between, like the Xbox brand and that potential for Microsoft gaming, like there was that whole thing where Phil Spencer's name, his title was changed to the CEO of Microsoft Gaming or whatever the hell it was. It felt like internally there was a lot of ructions, a lot of changes going on. Then we had the studio closures, and it was like, do you guys even know what the hell you're doing? Are you just getting rid of people to make up the bottom line because of how much you spent on Call of Duty? And that seemed to be what a lot of insiders were saying as well. The double-edged sword with this is, like, yes, there were a ton of phenomenal games, Perfect Dark, Doom, etc., that we're going to get to in the full podcast version of this video. But it felt like overall a lot of games ended on, like, either didn't have a release date or was coming 2025.
Right.
And that's great. I love seeing the gameplay, and I believe in the overall vision. I do think this is the best reinforcement for what Game Pass brings to the industry. That idea of a variety of titles that you're just going to be able to access every month, and you hope the players actually turn up for them. But in like a brass tacks reality thing, we're not really that further forward than previously. Like, we knew all these things were in motion. There are other things like Expedition 33 or whatever, but it still felt like it's like, okay, like they turned up, they had a bunch of gameplay trailers, they did exactly what we needed them to do, and then we all go, it's okay now, it's cool.
No, yeah, 100%.
And it's not like there are still obviously the studio closures from a month or so ago, but they're gonna need to actually deliver the video games. There is a weird reality of that.
That's it, right? You know, I saw some sentiment online being that Xbox has always trailed really well, but when it comes to delivering the games, that's another thing entirely. You know, Hellblade earlier this year, Crackdown 3 before that, Halo 5, Infinite, you know, all of these games that looked amazing and had so much promise and then came out and weren't all that amazing. That said, I'm trying to stay optimistic, Scott. And I know that a lot of games were announced for 2025 and beyond, but to be honest, I don't want to get too greedy, because I think Xbox has a pretty stacked lineup for this year. You know, there was already Hellblade last month, which I still really enjoyed. We've got Avowed dropping this year. We've got Indiana Jones dropping this year. We've got the DLC for Starfield. And probably a few other things that I'm missing off there as well that are exclusive. And to me, that's enough. That's enough for a kind of first party showing for a single year. And then when you look to next year with Doom and whatnot, that looks even better. So it feels like everyone. We talk about the starting pistol for the generation quote when it came to Starfield last year. It does feel like that momentum has finally arrived, and like the games are starting to be delivered. When I looked at this showcase, obviously these games are years and years in development. We've known about a lot of them over the past 5 years. It makes me more gutted about this supposed approach from Microsoft to start scrutinizing Xbox, because when we talked about the news a few months ago, I said, like, it feels like the worst time for them to do it because they haven't quite been able to deliver on their initial vision yet. And this, to me, is them delivering on that initial vision to finally have these games ready to go from the studios they've been hoovering up. And I just want them to be good. I don't want them to be caught in this period where Microsoft's now being like, oh, I don't know about all these decisions, Phil. Why did you buy all these studios?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, is that maybe it has just taken this long to get this many moving parts together with this many studios and this many debuts and gameplay trailers to get the games into a good enough state that you can do a vertical slice and just try and show the reality of what that game's actually going to play like. like, just because of the reality of modern gaming, and it takes longer to get something into a playable state, because it was forever nearer launch dates and everything. Maybe that's it. Just took this long. I'd love to give them the full benefit of the doubt, but I feel like, I do overall, but like there is that thing of just the body slain along the way is a hell of a thing, and the weird inertia of the console generation on their part, like the whole idea of you don't really need a Series X at all. That's like the weird clarification of the SKUs themselves, that the Series S is the main system and the X is the deluxe one, even though obviously it's directly comparable between PS5 and Series X. The assumption that they're building stuff for the Series X, that wasn't necessarily the case. I think all of that's really fascinating. And then, looking at the slate, it's a weird thing to go like, oh, it's a really good first party lineup, just because they've hoovered everything up. Yeah. Like, it's all first party by default now. And like it has worked in their favor. And it's like, overall, ultimately, I'm happy for the teams. They've got the funding. I like the variety of genres that are on show. It's demonstrably better than what Sony had. Like the Sony one is not even a blip. Like,
no, I mean, obviously Microsoft is dominating the conversation. Their showcase was good. Sony needed something, but I honestly wouldn't want to compare this to the State of Play, because they seem like such radically different things. Like, that was definitely not marketed as a showcase or anything like that. But we definitely can sit here and be like, well, why haven't they got anything? Like, why haven't they announced their 2025 slate when we're so excited for Microsoft now?
Well, that's the thing, and the way that the Sony one went, I think it's because of the context, the timing of it. Like, in the year, it's always assumed that it's the summer gaming season. There's all the streams, all the live shows, and I feel like this year, like across IGN Live and Summer Game Fest, there was this, and even like things like the Ubisoft Forward, it was like we've got live audiences back, we've got reveals, we've got that energy, which is so vital to gaming. Like, we did a whole thing on the Summer Game Fest, and the way that that's rolled out across the last few years, and the idea of E3 season, and how kind of important that stuff is, or it can be, to a vibrant industry. And so, I feel like overall they needed this. Yeah. It's just that I'm going to need a game. I'm going to need something to actually drop and be good.
You just got Hellblade. Okay, and be good. We just got Hellblade. We've got Avowed coming up. We got Indiana Jones. We got Shattered Space. Come on. there could be some bangers in and amongst those. You got to admit.
No, there will be. I just mean like actual release.
I know. Hopefully, like, again, it's hope, right? Yeah. You hope those games are good. None of us know if they're going to be worth the amount of time we waited for a lot of them, or if it's going to be worth getting into Game Pass for, or getting an Xbox Series X or S for. I thought it was interesting that, you mentioned them kind of the way they approach the showcase. Starting with Call of Duty Black Ops 6, I thought was interesting, but more interesting than that, I quite liked the snide comments that were made by Phil Spencer on stage in regards to shading Sony's approach to the series, because for the past 10 years, Sony has had the, I think it's like the marketing rights. They've had a relationship with Activision for Call of Duty, so that's meant you get the betas early on PlayStation. They always show up on PlayStation stage, and they have that advertising deal, or you might get entire modes that are locked behind buying the game on a PlayStation system. So for Phil to get up there and make a huge deal of like, hey, for the first time in 10 years, you can play every bit of content on every console that you have, or PC, or whatever it is. I thought that was... The snide in me appreciated that, but it was a strange beat to be like, we obviously not going to make it exclusive. We've got it on Game Pass. What else do we have to make this feel special? It's like we're doing things different from the opposition.
I felt like in regards to COD, I thought they front loaded it so much, where it's like they do need to start associating the Xbox brand, or even just the color scheme or whatever, with Call of Duty in general. Make sure that if you think Call of Duty, you think Xbox. That's definitely what they want. But you did have even in later comments from Phil Spencer in interviews about the reality of the way those deals worked in the past, referring to them as slimy and things like that, and trying to make sure that everything gets out there overall and not lock things down to specific platforms. There is just that reality of the way that it's come together, the amount of money that's been spent, and then like that weird altruistic approach that he has now, where it's like everything's for everyone. It's cool, but buy our console. I still think that's I was going to say a time limited approach. It could be years worth, but I think at some point they will lock this stuff back down again. Otherwise, why isn't Gears Gears and Perfect Dark and Fable, why is everything not multi-platform if that's what you really believe in? And there's a weird quote doing the rounds when he talks about Doom, the Dark Ages being available on multi-platform because that's a franchise everyone deserves to play. And it's like, so the other ones we don't deserve to play that? Like, there's a whole weird way of approaching that once you invoke multi-platform stuff. And the last thing I was going to say in regards to Call of Duty and the multi-platform thing and everything becoming available is that, at least on the Xbox side, is the closed beta is going to be part of Game Pass as well. So just little things like that. The idea of how premium Call of Duty felt in terms of the amount of money you need to throw at it to get the early access, to get the specific betas and things like that. They're opening all that stuff up. And I guess if they pair that with just get Game Pass to unlock it all, then maybe that works.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating experiment. I think they've really looked out that it looks like they've got a really solid Call of Duty game to launch all of this stuff with. I think this would have gone down far worse if they were launching this with Modern Warfare 3 or even Modern Warfare 2 before that. Black Ops 6 has enjoyed a full development cycle. It looks really fresh. It looks like the best Treyarch's been in a while. In my opinion, there's a lot of hype around the changes that have been made to the mechanics. So to pair that with this new approach to put it on Game Pass day one, incentivize people to play on Xbox, it could be a match made in heaven, but it's fascinating to see Call of Duty, like you said, pivot from this premium price point and being staunch about selling everything at $70 to start putting parts of it on Game Pass, or to start widening the audience perhaps through Game Pass and that sort of a lower barrier to entry. I'm going to be interested to see how that works because they're still obviously flogging battle passes. They're still flogging the Vault editions of these games, which get you that battle pass and black cell and skips and skins and all of that stuff, $100 for that edition of the game. So that's never going to go away. So it's going to be interesting how they complement both sides of that kind of spectrum, that buy-in spectrum.
Yeah, there's like a whole economy they need to make work with the subscription model underpinning the whole thing. But overall, like as a general thoughts thing, this is the best Xbox has looked in a long time. I can't fully say that because my brain reminds me that they haven't actually produced anything. So I can't. They trailer really well. The proof's going to be in the pudding, and the pudding isn't here yet. So I'm curious, but it shows very well. It's very confident. The showcase was handled very well and paced really, really well. And every single thing here, I thought I want to play that. Yeah. Which I didn't feel for SGF or Sony. No. So or Ubisoft or whatever. So I'm back on board as I can be. But because it's been such a messy road to get here, I'm still going to hold out and waiting to see, in the words of Jar Jar Binks, what they actually release.
Smart move. The proof will be in the pudding. Like you said, they've always had great showcases. Even over the past few years, they've had like solid announcements, solid trailers. It's never been, to me, again, like I said at the very start of this podcast 10 hours ago, it's never been an issue with the developers of the games, even though all the games haven't hit. It's my expectation is tempered because I don't know where the company is going forward, and I must admit, seeing Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Sarah Bond on stage, they felt more alien than they ever have, more lizard people than they ever had, and maybe that's just because I'm associating them with the recent news and not, but I was like, there was a distrust in the air every time they were talking, and that might be a me thing, it might not be,
if Matt Booty just peeled his face off, I would be like, I know.
Yeah, right, okay, it makes sense, yeah.
Fair enough.
Who knows, maybe they will get better at that stuff, maybe they will make Xbox healthier going forward, but
the thing
similarly
is,
with that, the proof needs to be in the pudding, right? I can only judge them by their actions, and their actions this year have not been good.
They released BAFTA award-winning video games that they themselves said did very well and were received very well, and then shut the studios anyway. So we need multiple of these games to release.
Yeah.
To maybe the real proof would be one of them to actually be a sales bomb, and then they keep the studio.
Absolutely, that's the proof, right? The proof is for something like South of Midnight to come out or whatever, and for it to do all right, and for them to not immediately write it off as a mistake and to pivot into IPs or whatever it is and get rid of that studio, because it's like, come on guys, like you bought all of these studios, please do right by them. Hopefully they understand that now, but similarly, the proof will be in the pudding, because I personally, I said I quite like the snidiness of Phil at the start of the showcase to kind of throw shade at Sony, but at the same time, to pretend like you're this company for everyone in light of recent news it does continue to ring tone deaf to me. I don't think there's anything they could have said to make me not think that. Even if they addressed the closures and had a reason for it, I still probably would be saying the same thing. But I'm like, you're gonna have to do a lot of work to get away from that. And get some trust back for me personally.